Hello and welcome to Nihongo Gamer Ultimate Comparison Hardware. We're going to be looking at the old 3DS and comparing it to the new Nintendo 3DS and seeing how they differ in terms of hardware. This video is broken up into 3 parts. It's going to be hardware, software, and games. So if you want to see the links to those videos, check in the description below. Let's get started. The old Nintendo 3DS had a length of 134mm by 74mm, and it is 21mm thick. The new Nintendo 3DS has a length of 142mm by 80.6mm, and is 21.6mm thick. So for comparing the two units together, you'll see that it is a bit shorter lengthwise, like this, about that much, basically, and it is also a little shorter in height as well. If you're comparing the thickness now, you can see that they are pretty much exactly the same. There's really no difference there, except for maybe half a millimeter thicker on the new Nintendo 3DS. In terms of weight, the old 3DS is 230 grams and the new one is 253 grams. Technically, this one is now heavier, but if you hold them together, it actually feels like the new Nintendo 3DS is lighter. This one has a wider weight distribution, and because of that, this one is more concentrated and feels heavier in the hand. It actually feels lighter to hold the new model, but technically, the new Nintendo 3DS is actually heavier. The old Nintendo 3DS had this strange kind of clamshell design which was a little chunkier than the DS Lite, and for some reason kind of came out at the front like this. I'm not really sure why it did that. It also had slightly boxier edges and kind of angles in kind of, I would describe them as random places. The new Nintendo 3DS by comparison looks a lot like a DS XL, if a 3DS XL, if it were smaller, basically. It has rounded corners here, there is no lip here at the top, which is inexplicable, and generally doesn't have edges where it doesn't need them. Also, the new Nintendo 3DS does have these very useful changeable covers. You do not have that feature on the old 3DS. Obviously, you've got them on the back as well. It's just so seamless, and there's only really screws where, you know, there have to be a screw, but apart from that, you don't see any edges or screws on the new Nintendo 3DS. Whereas the old 3DS kind of has a lot of screws in lots of different places. There are just generally seams all over the place and just lines where I don't even really know why there are lines here. I don't know why this couldn't just be a single piece of plastic. The new 3DS definitely feels a little higher in quality, though it is actually a bit more plasticky. The old model was kind of glossy, and it felt like it had this more metallic kind of feel to it, but the new model has gone for the more toy feel. The old model feels like this hinge felt a little weak to me. It's so quiet, listen. It doesn't actually click there. It does click at the end, but it's not as loud. The buttons and the sliders as well, they all just click into place and everything feels like it's correct. The game card slot was on the top of the unit, and it has now moved to the bottom of the 3DS on the new model. Looking at the shoulder buttons now, you can see that the old buttons had a sort of mouse-type click to them, and the new ones have a sort of softer click to them. It just feels less clicky, and more like a games console and less like a mouse. As you can see, the old model only had the L and R buttons, whereas the new model has L, ZL, and R and ZR. Those features are not really used in that many games, but games like Monster Hunter do give you options to set ZL and ZR to things like changing the camera angle. The charging slot has been moved over to the center here on the new Nintendo 3DS, and that the infrared port is still here on the top. The top of the old Nintendo 3DS has the stylus coming in here, but on the new version it has been moved to the bottom, so you'll have to pull the stylus out of the bottom. If you're not used to that, that can be a little jarring at first. There was a wrist strap hole here on the right and the left. It was easy to put a strap in there so you didn't drop your DS while playing with it, maybe if you were out and about. That has been moved to the top of the unit. I personally don't like it very much there. It seems like a bit of a daft place to put a wrist strap. I don't think there was any real real need to change that. The wireless switch was here, and there was a light that told you that wireless was on and active, and that has now completely disappeared. We don't have that on the new unit. If you need to check whether your wireless is on, you actually check it from this shortcut settings menu in here, and there's a button here for wireless and NFC. Looking here at the other side, you'll see that there's an SD card slot that used to house the SD card on the old 3DS. That has now been moved. There's a micro SD card, not an SD card, in this slot here, and you cannot access that without taking the back cover off. However, you don't have to screw these screws in, so if you don't screw it in, it's still quite easy to access. You can see there's an indicator light for the power on the old 3DS, but on the new Nintendo 3DS, the indicator light has been moved up a bit. In fact, all the indicator lights have been moved up a bit, and actually the power is now inset like this, and you have to kind of use your nail to press it, and it's not very easy to press, but that's probably a good thing. You don't want to be pressing it by accident, so that's probably good. Where on the old 3DS, obviously the power was here. There used to be a wireless indicator here on the side, but that has now been moved to the front on the new Nintendo 3DS. I think that means that it's easier so that when you have the docking station like this, it's easy to see all three indicator lights there on the top, and also your status and information light here at the front. It's difficult to see, but on the new Nintendo 3DS, we have bumpers here. There's one here and one here, and that helps to keep the screens separated from each other. All we had was these plastic lines here that seemed to not do a very good job of keeping the screens apart, and a lot of people were complaining that there was plastic lines going here and here on the 3DS. On the new Nintendo 3DS, I haven't noticed any lines as yet, but only time will tell whether those sort of things do appear. For now, it seems that these plastic bumpers are doing their job and keeping the screen amply separated from each other. In terms of battery, it was actually quite difficult to get the battery out of the old 3DS. I think you have to use all these screws to get that off. But on the new Nintendo 3DS, because you don't have to screw them in all the time, you can actually just leave it loose and then just pop the back cover off. And it's very easy to access this removable battery. Okay, let's have a look at the stylus. On the old 3DS, it was a telescoping pen, and it was about this long. And on the new Nintendo 3DS, it does not telescope, and it also comes out the bottom of the 3DS, which is different. Having a look at the length here, you can see that the new Nintendo 3DS stylus is not anywhere near as long as the old one when telescoped. And when you fold it, you can see that they are almost the same length, but the new Nintendo 3DS stylus is a bit longer. It does have a faster processor than the 3DS, and there are no specs on exactly how fast it is, but it is a little bit faster, and it means that it's fast enough to play the Xenoblade game, which will be coming out soon, which was a Nintendo Wii game, so it should be fast enough to play games of that kind of caliber. Also inside the new Nintendo 3DS is a near-field communication chip, and that allows you to use amiibo toys. I think they're kind of like memory cards that look like Mario characters, and you'll be able to take one of those characters and just sit it on top of the screen like that, and the device will know who you are and remember all your statistics for your character. It will work on the new Nintendo 3DS, but will have no effect on the old 3DS. How does it feel in the hands? Well, I've got to say, the old 3DS was a little bit too small for my hands. I had to kind of angle my thumbs in, my palms in a bit like this. I didn't really like the feel of it. New Nintendo 3DS is, well, of course I could still pull my palms in a bit, but it is just that little bit wider, and I think that just works a little bit better for my hands. It means that I don't have to carry an XL around with me. This is just a regular new Nintendo 3DS, but I would say that it's already kind of a very nice fit for my hand, so I really do like the size of this. Now, the old 3DS was pretty bad at taking pictures, and the new one is also pretty bad at taking pictures, but it is much better than the old version. The new camera is the same resolution as the old camera. They are 0.3 megapixels. However, the new version can take better photos in low light situations. It also has less noisy pictures, and the pictures are just generally sharper as well. Okay, let's go ahead and take a picture with the old Nintendo 3DS camera. I'll just go ahead and click there. Okay, let's look at that picture. Looks pretty bad. Okay, now let's take a picture with the new Nintendo 3DS. Okay, ready, click. Looks actually quite a bit better now. If I hold them side by side, it's very difficult to tell from the camera, but the new Nintendo 3DS has better, sort of deeper reds and has a lot less noise. This one has a lot of white specks on it, whereas this one actually has a lot less of those specks. I would say that the new Nintendo 3DS definitely looks better, even just in a normal lighting situation. Okay, I've turned most of the lights off, and I will just try and take a picture with the old 3DS here. As you can see, it's done something strange. This whole screen has gone orange in order to take this picture. And yeah, that looks pretty grim. So you can just see there, that picture is very, very grainy, has all sorts of strange colors in it, in addition to being completely red and orange. Okay, let's take the same picture with the new Nintendo 3DS. So as you can see, already much better, that we don't have that red glare. I'll take the picture. Looks pretty much the same as the picture we just took when the lights were actually on. So that's with the lights off. That's with the lights on. Let's compare that with the old 3DS. This is with the lights off, and this is with the lights on. So pretty much a world of difference. The old 3DS had a 3-inch diagonal screen and a 3.5-inch diagonal upper screen. The new Nintendo 3DS has a larger lower screen. It is 3.33 inches in diagonal, and the top screen, the upper screen, has a 3.88 inch. So it's 3.5 by 3.8 or 3.9, and this one is 3 inches by 3.5. So it is actually quite a bit larger, and it really makes a difference when you play games. If I'm not mistaken, all old 3DSs had a black surround here. I have a feeling that has something to do with the 3D effect. I think Nintendo thought that the 3D effect worked better if they had a black surround on the unit. However, with the XL, they got rid of that, as you know, and as you can see, on the white unit for the new Nintendo 3DS, you do not have to have a black surround. So that is really nice. Design-wise, I much prefer that. Up here at the top of the new Nintendo 3DS, there is a light sensor, and that is used to change the automatic brightness settings so that it can conserve battery power. I think the reason it needs to conserve battery power is because the camera is always on, and the reason it's always on is to check to see where your face is so it knows how to control the 3D blur effect. The old 3DS did not do that, and so it didn't waste battery power doing it, and as a result, it also doesn't have the sensor to help it change the brightness automatically on the screen. Hopefully, this light sensor will actually improve the battery life of the device. However, having the camera on all the time means that it probably will lose battery a lot to that as well. On the previous 3DS, obviously volume was here on the bottom, right here on the left, and it was kind of difficult to see what level it was if you weren't looking at it already. On the new Nintendo 3DS, you can see at a glance, it's very clear. Here on the left, there is volume, and you have the 3D slider here on the right. While we're talking about the sliders, also, you can see that the old slider didn't click in place. It would just go down, and then 3D would just suddenly switch off. On the new one, it's a bit like the Nintendo 3DS XL, where it comes down slowly, and then right here, it clicks into place, like that. Volume on the left is exactly the same. It slides down and then clicks into place. I think it's kind of nice that it's symmetrical as well. It had a lit up 3D word here, and as you can see, the new unit is just, it can be white or it can be black, and they've just got rid of it and they've just etched it into the screen like this, because they must have realized they didn't need it or something. Now, getting down to one of the main features on the new Nintendo 3DS is the C-Stick. Obviously, you do not have the C-Stick on the old model. The C-Stick sits right here, right above the X, B, A, Y buttons. So there it is. That is the C-Stick. Obviously, it doesn't move, as we saw in a previous video that I made, but you just kind of push it a bit like an IBM ThinkPad. You can see also there is an indentation here. And that's, I think, just so that your thumb doesn't have to rest on something hard. I have quite a large hand, and I never ever braise that area, and I think that helps that they've cut that area in, so that's a nice touch. It's also entirely possible that this hole here is just for people with long fingernails. The new unit on the regular model has colorful Super Famicom buttons, whereas the old edition only had buttons that matched the device. Now, there were some that had colorful buttons that were a single blue color or a single yellow color, and then the device was black. However, there were no models that had these colorful blue, green, red, yellow buttons like the Super Famicom. So that is exclusive to the regular new Nintendo 3DS. In fact, the new Nintendo 3DS XL does not have these colorful buttons. Let's have a look at the home button. It was here in the middle at the bottom on the old 3DS, but it had a sort of soft feel to it. It was kind of like a soft key, and you just sort of tapped it, and it didn't feel good to press, and I never really liked it. And then at the same time, it also had start and select on that same panel, and it just never really felt that nice to press. Whereas on the new unit, it is actually a real button, and it's got a picture of a home on it, and it just feels much more satisfying to press. And also start and select have been completely removed, so start and select have been moved here to the side. It's basically the same design as the DS Lite. As you can see, these indicator lights here actually turn into a microphone port here. That is not an indicator light. That hole is actually the microphone. That design language has really, they've put a lot of thought into that. Whereas on the old version, it was very discreet, and they tried to hide it, but you could see that that's a hole and those are lights. Looking over here at the D-pad, you can see that it still clicks exactly like it did before. So that feels really identical to the way it was before. But if you look at the slide pad, they have actually changed a little bit. So the slide pad before had this very slight ridge on it before, where you could kind of feel where the edge of it was. And on the new unit, it is just completely smooth. So there's no kind of ridge there on it. But in terms of movement, it's exactly the same. You can see the speakers more clearly here on the new Nintendo 3DS, but yes, it is the same design as the old 3DS. The old one had these 5 dots in lines like this, and the new Nintendo 3DS has exactly the same design, whereas the XL used a sort of circular design, and I don't know really why they changed that. The dots are a little bit larger than the other dots. I don't know if that means that it will be louder. Sounds fairly loud. Let's pause that and let's play it on the new Nintendo 3DS. Okay, sounds kind of the same to me. That's really tricky to tell. Okay, that's really hard to tell. I'm gonna be quite honest, they sound exactly the same. They must have exactly the same speakers. These holes are a little bit bigger, but the new Nintendo 3DS is not any louder than the original 3DS. Okay, that's all we have time for. I hope that answered all your questions about the old 3DS and the new 3DS. There's a lot to compare, and if you want to see the links to the other videos, don't forget to check the description below. And until then, just keep commenting, subscribing, and sharing all the links, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! It actually feels lighter to hold than you're better off just watching video in the browser. It's nice if you want to play your DS games with a larger screen.